Valley Art Speak. Today we're going to be talking to Doug Peltzman. Doug is a potter who has established a studio in the Hudson Valley. Hi, Doug. Thanks for coming today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so tell me a little bit about your work, Doug. I know that this is porcelain.
Yep.
And do you do mostly utilitarian things, or what kind of work are you doing these days?
Yeah, I mean, mostly the things I make are meant to be used. You know, I can't really control whether or not someone's going to buy a teapot and put it up on the shelf. You know, it'd make a beautiful decorative item in a house as well, but I make them with the intention that they're going to be used, you know, and it's really important for them to function really well, aside from them being beautiful too.
Yeah, they really are beautiful. You said you've been doing a lot of shows, that you've gone around the country doing invitational shows. How does that work?
Well, you know, it's the kind of thing that after sort of establishing myself within the sort of ceramics community, your work sort of snowballs in a way if you're making, you know, good work, and you get invited to do things, you know. People who organize events sort of always have like a bead on who's making good work, or is there a younger artist sort of up and coming making good work. And so yeah, those pottery shows have been great in the sense that more often than not they're very low overhead. You know, you bring your work, the setup is there, there's not a fee to be a part of it, and it's a great time. You get to hang out with 10 or 20 other people, potters, who are doing exactly what you're doing.
Do you find that when you're hanging out with other potters that it sparks ideas and generates new work maybe? Or
I'm not so sure it becomes a source of inspiration for my work, but it's more of like a shop talky kind of thing, where you get to see how other potters or artists, really, we're all artists, are cobbling together a life, you know, and making a living off what they're doing, you know, and seeing all the other little side things that people are doing aside from maybe making their work. And maybe some of them are teaching, maybe some of them have an urn business, or a ceramic bat business that's somehow supplementing their income. So, you know, it's nice to chat with, other colleagues in that regard.
Yeah, I find a lot of artists that I know that are successful at selling their work and are supporting themselves do that. They do a lot of other things in addition to just making their pots or their paintings.
Yeah.
There's a lot more to it, isn't there?
Yeah, you know, I've been lucky so far in the sense, or maybe just stubborn, I don't know, that I haven't really found that other thing yet. So that puts a lot of pressure on the work, you know, which, I'm sort of evaluating and trying to figure out. Maybe I develop a production line, you know, or something more pared down or simplistic or digestible for a larger audience that has a lower price point as well. I don't know, you know, it's all just a matter of, committing and taking the leap. And, you know, I'm just at this point committed to these pots, and this body of work.
Yeah, it seems to me that with all the painting and the decoration on these pots, that it is a time-consuming effort that you put into each piece here.
Yeah. Yeah, no doubt about that. I mean, you know, the pieces are, for example, little keepsake jar like this, or sugar jar, or a little salt cellar, whatever you want to call it. You know, it gets thrown on the wheel. It gets it has to dry, and then it gets trimmed and carved, and then these handles get attached and modeled, and the bottom is trimmed as well. And then after all the trimming, I do all the drawing on it, and then inlay all the black into the drawing, and then fire it, and then it comes out, and then it gets layers of wax resist and latex, liquid latex, and all these other sort of techniques that I use to get the glazes to sit next to each other in this way. So yeah, very, very time consuming.
So from beginning to end, like how long would it take to do a mug like this?
It's hard to say. I mean, I work in, when I sit down, I'll throw 10 or 15 or 20 mugs in a day, and then the next day I'll trim those mugs, and then the day after that I'll make the handles and put the handles on those mugs, and then the day after that I'll draw on all those mugs, or maybe actually I can only really draw on maybe around 8 a day I can do, so it's hard to put a time on it, but I would just say a lot of time.
But they're all individual, aren't
Yes,
they? And they're
yes.
all, there's no two that are really the same, because
Not really,
each
no.
one is made individually.
Yeah.
You grew up in Long Island, and you live in the Hudson Valley now, and I know we had discussed this before, but do you find that where you live influences your work or changes your work?
I'm an observer. I like the phrase "notice what you notice," and it's a quote from a former professor, Chris Staley, and and it's this idea that we as art makers, essentially are just seeing the world a little bit differently than other people, and we're noticing the way a leaf lays on a rock, and sort of photographing that as a compositional thing or an art, or a piece of art, and so I am, while I do think my environment influences the work I make, I'm not necessarily too conscious of it. It's kind of these things that sort of soak themselves in over time. For instance, I don't have the pattern here, but there's a pattern that I do that was inspired by the way that the rain hits my windshield when I'm driving at 50 miles an hour, and it sort of streaks and pulls. So yeah.
Yeah, I love that you said that, because I'm a photographer, and I find that sometimes my brain it's like I hear click, 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 and like I'm not taking pictures, but I really am. And it just, I think that those small things that you see a little bit differently than somebody else really does influence what you do.
Yeah, and it makes your sort of, your voice unique.
Now, what's a day like for you? You get up, you're ready to work. What do you do?
Well, my studio is sort of like in ground zero, in the sense that I work from home, and my studio is in my home, literally. And I have a 10-month-old and a 3-year-old, and so the day can be potentially fractured. But my ideal is to wake up, do the breakfast thing with the kids, and be in the studio by 8:30. And typically I'll work, and that could be doing any number of tasks. Most of the time, if I'm happy in the studio, I'm either throwing or drawing on pots or glazing or something. But a lot of times I could be emailing or resizing images, or phone conversations, and setting up workshops. Email has become sort of a huge consumption of time, which so I don't really sort of have specific times where I do. It's sort of all lumped and get it done, and then at noon I'll take a break, and then pretty much work from 1 to 5, and then do the kids' bedtime thing, and then more often than not, I go back in the studio, cup of coffee, 8 to 11,
Really?
You know, yeah, because it's, you know, it's my primary source of income. So
Do you ever work with interns in your studio?
it's something that is an assistant or an intern is something that's definitely been rolling around in my head lately, because there are a lot of there's a lot to learn, and there's also a lot of sort of, at this point, mundane tasks that I have to do, but that somebody else could be doing.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
I know you had mentioned that when you went to art school, and you also got your master's, and that while you were taking your classes, there's no business of art classes that you took. So
Right.
would that be helpful for an artist, or even helpful for an intern to work at that end of the things?
I mean, yeah, you know, and I think that's why, you know, apprenticeship programs, which are few and far between, you know, there's a few in North Carolina that are still happening, and a few here and there sprinkled around, are really sort of, you know, potentially beneficial as an option to not going to school, maybe, you know, because you're learning firsthand how to run a business, and you're also being exposed to an already established market, you know, that potter or whoever artist is exposing you to. But yeah, I mean, in grad school, I took a small business management class just because I knew that, you know, I wanted to make pots, and you know, and I didn't know how to keep books or, you know, do taxes or things like that. So while I think it's important, I don't know that giving art students a well-rounded art education leaves enough time to also make them good business people, you know?
Right.
That's sort of like, you got to learn that on the job almost,
Right,
you know?
right. Yeah, marketing is a huge part of it.
Yeah, yeah, you know?
So do you use a lot of social media? I think you do Instagram, and you have all sorts of followers.
Yeah, it's funny. Yeah, Instagram, and I have a few. Well, the ceramics community really is really active on Instagram now. So a friend of mine and a fellow potter, Adam Field, started this thing called Hide and Seeka, where at the NSECA conference we were hiding pottery and posting clues on Instagram, and it created this craze.
Oh,
so,
great idea.
you know, and he created this whole thing, and it really boosted the follower thing. And yeah, so social media is really important. I mean, it's sort of like, you know, a wagon that we have to jump on in some ways, you know, as technology advances.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you know what, Doug, we're out of time.
Yeah.
Unbelievably. I feel like we just got started.
Yeah.
So thanks so much for coming today.
Anytime. Yeah.
Yeah, it was terrific.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And it's just such interesting work.